So my full-time job, I'm a therapist at the mental health center. So I'm a professional listener. This is what I do all day. I work with some of the folks you might consider living in the shadows of life. I work with people who live under the bridge sometimes. I work with also people who might be members of your family who suffer from mental illness. On the other hand, I'm also part of a small business, the Old Capitol Tavern in Sauk Rapids there. And when I make these decisions, when I went to St. Paul and when I hopefully go back, I'm weighing both from a social perspective or a social services perspective, as well as a small business perspective. And I bring both of those in every time I make a decision. And I hope that you recognize that and look forward to hearing what
Two top priorities.
Transportation, of course, number one. I think no matter what partner comes back, it's going to say transportation is the number one priority. And how we do that is probably need some differences. I'm willing to make some investments. And we did do a lot for transportation this past year. May not look like, but we created the Corridors of Commerce program. I was the chief officer for getting that lane from St. Michael to Rogers, and Governor Dave made that a priority. We went above and beyond what MnDOT wasn't a big fan of that. And we said, no, we're going to move something forward here. And yeah, $80 million pothole bill. I know it doesn't fill everything, but we have had some incredibly horrible winters on our roads. Second of all, my priority is a little more complex, but it's related to education and integration of mental health support so that our teachers can teach and so that our kids get the other help they need inside the schools. It's just going to be so much more efficient. We're moving in that direction, but there's still a lot more work to be done.
Then, Zach, you can hold on to that because we're going to start the next one. This is a 2-minute answer to it, twice as much time to get their ideas out. Minnesota's tax structure is often cited for its impact on our ability to attract new businesses into the state, which would create jobs. Businesses and persons of accumulated wealth are reportedly leaving the state in search of better tax climates. So how would we make the tax environment more competitive for existing and future businesses and retirees in our state?
Well, I hear the frustrations of creating that fourth tier tax bracket income in that question. And we say reportedly leaving the state. But we've gained over 160,000 jobs since Governor Dave took office. Forbes magazine rated us 8th best in the nation for economy, and CNBC the 6th best in the country for business. We've taken these investments and we've done wise things with them. We invested in higher ed and LinkedIn. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I know a lot of you have a LinkedIn profile. We're the second best place in the world to recruit college to find quality education college graduates. So I think we're doing wise things with tax structures that we created. Yes, there are obviously more efficiencies. I rattled off a bunch with a bar and restaurant, and there's no big clean answer. But I support the changes we made, and I think we've done an incredible job making those investments show. I'm always open to any suggestions you have. Keep it at that. We're talking about efficiencies a lot, and MnDOT's been pinched every way they can. So I just want to point out that cost per mile per road, we're still cheaper and more efficient than Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So we do a really good job, especially with the wild and crazy winters we have here. But yes, there are always more efficiencies. And MnDOT's pretty good at bringing them to us, and we've incorporated many of those. Funding will be, I'll agree, this is a complicated subject. We've relied on the gas tax for very long. You don't just hear this at the state level, but at the federal level. Cars are getting a better gas mileage. So we're losing that revenue. Costs that are obviously going up. And then the bonding bill, we would have gone bigger, but we didn't have enough votes to do it. We could have made more investments. And I do believe that's where we're going to be headed. And we have to also be careful how we do that. We also have to get creative options. I kind of take a heat from my side of the aisle sometimes for being a proponent of public-private partnerships. If we're going to build new roads, I'm willing to be flexible. I think that's an option, and making things like that happen. But we do well. We do really good here in Minnesota. But we're falling behind, just like the rest of the nation, because of how to fund it. So we can get serious about it. We can talk about the gas tax. No, that's not a permanent solution. I think that needs to be left on the table if we're going to be serious about this. And there's more creative options, working with counties more closely, and fostering the trend of cities growing up, not out. That's what they're doing. And we need to roll with this. We need to invest in multimodal transportation. We need to get the train up here. People want to take it. They want to get off the roads. We can get more people off the roads and get more commerce on. We had the unsession. Of course, you might remember Governor Hagan talking about that. It didn't get as many headlines, but we removed about 1,100 laws, outdated regulations, and statutes off the books. That was a big deal. Often overlooked. It made streamlined a lot of regulation processes. And we'll be talking about regulations forever, because every time company A, B, and C does something bad, the public complains, and then we regulate it, then people complain about the regulations. So that we're going to be talking about this forever. So we get the specifics. We go after the bad guys who do something bad and not punish everybody. Not making one-size-fits-all regulation for just a couple of entities that did something out of line. So I think we could definitely work harder on that, on making the bad guys pay for what they've done, and not everybody. So we can always continue working on that.
Jim?
Well, you can't have change without anxiety, and the Affordable Care Act is probably the largest legislative change most of us have seen in our lifetime. And Mincher took the best of that, and I think our rules did better. Several years ago, Governor Plenty cut what was called general assistance medical care. It was the basic, bare bones medical care for some of the people I worked with. When that happened, under a GOP House, they just needed just a few votes to override his veto, and they could have saved some lives. And one client of mine had diabetes and schizophrenia. It was always a struggle for him to just keep his insurance rolling, keep those meds going. And when they took general assistance medical care away, he fell behind on all that. And long story short, he died due to the complications of not taking his medications. That's happening much more or less right now. People are getting quality care who had no care before. My clients are showing up because they have something in place. And when they show up, they get better. They get back into the workforce. We have about 5% uninsured rate. And yeah, this is a huge change. And you can't have change without anxiety, okay? Even if it's for the better. And it's going to be complicated and frustrating for a while. But I think Mincher took the best of this really complicated, awkward Obamacare situation. And yes, we were doing better than most states before, and now we're doing better than all of them.
Okay, we're going to shift a little bit. This is still about healthcare. I have a couple of questions on labor here and then closing comments unless something comes forward from the audience, so feel free to. And Zach, you'll start with this one. Last year, the Minnesota Nurses Union, supported by the National Nurses Union, backed a bill that sets patient-nurse ratios, staffing ratios in Minnesota hospitals. That bill may come back in 2015 and is critical to our St. Cloud Hospital and its ability to continue as a national top-performing hospital to keep staffing-related decisions with nurse leaders and nurses in hospitals. So what's your view of setting nurse staffing ratios legislatively?
I was one of a few Democrats who opposed the ratio mandate in committee and forced it to go back to a conversation. And what negotiated, but it was a study that's going to be out there. Our hospital rocks, and I'm proud to go down there and point out, hey, here's something you should look at. Central St. Cloud Hospital. So I'm very fearful of any kind of one-size-fits-all approach. And even though I voted against that, as you saw in the paper, I still have the Minnesota Nurses Association endorsement. I think is my background in healthcare, and I support the people's right to organize. But I don't want anything that's going to take away from the quality care that St. Cloud Hospital provides, and then and other rural hospitals. We don't need to pay the price for some hospitals that don't have their stuff together. But it is important. There's some hospitals that struggle a lot, and what they need to look at is why is the turnover so high? What do they need to do? Of course, everybody will bring up HCMC, and we know they serve probably the most vulnerable and complex population. A hospital like that is going to have turnover. And other hospitals in more rural areas than this are going to have turnover simply because they're losing population. So we're going to take a look at that study, and I don't think it's going to suggest a one-size-fits-all approach. I'm not a big supporter of that. Sure. Just so you know, that the inflationary factor on the minimum wage is kind of meant there is capped at 2%. So even if inflation rises more than 2%, it's still the most you're going to get is 2%. Now, why do that? To kind of help end the conversation, so you can plan. Otherwise, you come back and have this debate about minimum wage over and over and over and over. It would be nice if we have something that matched up more closely with the federal minimum wage. But yeah, the cost of living here in Minnesota is a little more expensive. We also have a more higher educated population that is going into a workforce in a service-based economy. Many college graduates here in the St. Cloud area work 2 or 3 part-time jobs as a full-time job. I can tell you that at my restaurant, I've had a couple people be able to leave their part-time job and work for us full-time. And this is a career for them. This is a shift that I think we all have to make, is with the service-based economy, we're not making anything, there are very few widgets. We're getting in Minnesota, we're getting good at high-tech manufacturing, and that field is growing a little bit. However, if we're a service-based economy, especially here in St. Cloud, people need to afford to be able to make a living wage without having to work 2 or 3 part-time jobs. And that's why I supported it. State tip credit, you're going to turn everybody out. What was on the table there was something called a tiered wage. I supported that. It didn't pass. And I'm pretty sure that'll be part of the conversation as we go forward. But I like the fact that a couple of my employees no longer have to work that other part-time job. If it was up to me, I would pay them more earlier, but as part of the team, of course, business decision. And we have quality employees who are helping our place just be better than it was.
Yeah.
But over 143 companies over the past year have either expanded or made plans for major expansion. Almost all of them cited the primary reason, or some of them who have opened up shop here, we're hearing to hear about why did they come here. It was because of our educated workforce. And this has been part of Minnesota's history. I believe it's what put us on the map. The University of Minnesota, the people who settled here, knew that they needed something to do in the winter. And they chose that something to be educating their children and themselves. So we've got a lot of catching up to do as far as higher ed goes. But we also do amazing things. I don't know if anybody knows what a neutrino beam is, but the University of Minnesota actually has a neutrino beam catcher. It's complicated, crazy, awesome stuff. And to know that that is being done here in Minnesota is amazing. People come here, they look here, they chose here because we've had this historic investment that we took a break from making for about 10 years, in my opinion. We played a little bit of catch-up last year, and I think we need to continue being the brain power state, because that's how we have historically, and I think in the future we'll continue to attract quality businesses that are looking towards the future. I just want to thank you, Teresa, for having us, and especially to Rotary, and a special thanks for the Lake George thing as a musician. I always find that super awesome. Living within walking distance with 2 young kids, that's an amazing thing what you've done for our community. Our community, Minnesota 6th Congressional District, there are 25 legislators who live there. I'm the only Democrat. I have to listen. I go to forums where I'm always in the minority as far as the legislators at the table. The first 2 years, I chief authored more than 50 pieces of legislation, and not because I was trying to author a bunch of legislation, but because I was trying to do things not just for my district, but for the St. Cloud area. I worked hard to help folks out in Sauk Rapids, got some things in the bonding bill for neighbors who didn't vote for it. And I don't mind that. That's okay. I like being a team player. And I want to go back and continue to do that. So I ask you to look at how much I was able to do in just 2 years. And I'm going to work just as hard, if not harder, to continue that progress.